All right, we should be live. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if everything looks good and you can hear me okay. Looks like we have 11 viewers watching. And today's class is going to be about outposts. All right, sounds good. Okay. So, first question for you guys. I'd like to know where everybody's from. So this is something that we do at the beginning of each class. Let me know in the chat, where is everybody from today? I'm from Minnesota, where it's like 50 degrees today, Fahrenheit. Christian's from Germany. Welcome, Christian. Peter's from Las Vegas. Just Simple, Wisconsin. Doug's from Massachusetts. Oh, Smithy Q is here from Ontario. Ian, Cayman Islands. Welcome, welcome. Brian from Canada. Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about looking at the ChessGoals demographics is that I think it's like 30% of our viewers on YouTube are from the US. Maybe 25%, somewhere in that range, 25 to 30. Santanu is from India. Welcome. Hey, Presta J. All right, good to see you, Presta J. All right, second question. Lyle, Washington, D.C. This is just kind of for my own information. I always like to ask, where did you first hear about ChessGoals? Where was the first place you heard about ChessGoals? Was it YouTube? Was it a podcast? Was it the rating comparison page? Did you Google us? Maybe find an opening course? Something along those lines. Where did you first hear about ChessGoals? Then after this question, we'll jump into the presentation. Okay, a couple of YouTubes, rating comparison page, YouTube, rating comparison, podcast, YouTube. Smithy Q slid into my DMs. No, random email. Googled an opening course. Oh yeah, Dane Matson. Awesome. So one thing that I'm working on is trying to build out our YouTube channel. So you'll see some changes to the YouTube channel lately, but we're really trying to grow our YouTube audience to influence as many students as possible. So you'll be seeing kind of more improvements going on with the YouTube channel, and I'm always open to feedback. So if you guys have suggestions, email me, let me know in Discord, YouTube comments, whatever. I really want to improve our YouTube channel. All right, podcast. All right, let's jump into the start of the class. Welcome to ChessGoals. If you don't know me, my name is Matt. I started chess when I was 5. I've been coaching since a pretty young age, around age 10. My chess prime was in high school, 3-time Minnesota high school chess champion. I now work in statistics, and I consider myself a little bit of an adult improver because I made a push for National Master starting around age 25, and I was able to get to it at age 29. So I had to gain like 70 points, and it was a tough 70 points to gain. I had to work pretty hard at it. And that's my current title, National Master. What is ChessGoals? ChessGoals was born on a survey asking people how they improve at chess, how they study chess. So I asked like, how many hours a week do you spend on all these different categories, whether it was blitz, rapid, slow chess, tactics, strategy, endgames, openings, on and on. I mapped that to how many rating points the players gained. So I knew their starting ratings, I knew their ages, and I used all of that data to formulate 6 levels of study plans. And these used to cost money. We had them as a product, but now they're free on the website, and they're called the ChessGoals Blueprint. It's one of our courses on the site. So those study plans will give you day by day exactly what to study in a 12-week layout. So every week gets its own page, and you have things to check off each day. So that was kind of the starting point of ChessGoals. How can we help students? And it was based on the study plans. We're now up to over 3,000 students with the course website. 15 courses, and we help students out every single day. Like we see Smithy Q in the chat. He is awesome. He's in our Discord server, and he's always helping people out. So that's something that we're hoping to keep growing to, growing the Chess Goals community and helping you guys improve, reaching your chess goals. So why was Chess Goals started? To help as many students as possible, so have an impact. This is more rewarding, I think, than doing one-on-one lessons. So I don't do any private lessons. I have one friend who I still teach, but other than that, I don't take on any new students because I want to help as many students as possible. And doing one-on-one lessons, even though it could make more money probably per hour, it just doesn't have as much of an impact. So that's why I like the courses, the YouTube channel, these sort of classes. Efficiency, so keep you guys focused on your goals. That's like the study plan, giving you things to do every single day. Just follow the process. Don't have to think about what should I study, switching books, switching methods. Just follow the process. Keeps it easy for you guys. Analytics. At Chess Goals, we love to use data to drive decisions whenever possible. I'm a huge fan of data. And guidance, we have the community and coaches to help you out as you go. All right, so here's today's agenda. We're 7 minutes in. We did introductions, who I am, what is Chess Goals. Now we're going to go into our interactive Outpost lessons. And then at the end, we will do a special promotion like we do at the end of most of the live streams and a question and answer session. All right, so what is an outpost? An outpost is a square on the opponent's side of the board that cannot be attacked by pawns, and it's usually on one of the more advanced ranks. So if you're playing the white pieces, you'll see it like on the 5th, 6th, or 7th rank, sometimes the 4th rank, and if you're playing the black pieces in the reverse, you'll see it on 4th, 3rd, maybe the 2nd rank. Usually an outpost is protected by pawns, so it's a secure square that you can put a piece, oftentimes a knight, but not always, and you put that piece on the outpost square, it can really cause a lot of trouble for your opponent. Now here's a dream example of an outpost, and we're going to go through some higher level examples today. This is a really easy example. We see this knight just posted up here on d5. This knight is just dominant. It cannot be attacked by any pawns. It's defended by r2 pawns. And it's going against a bad bishop that's the same color as all of black's pawns in the center and on the queen's side. So that's kind of a dream example of what an outpost is. So today's examples, we're going to look at historic games ranging from 1907 to 1978, which is before everyone in the chat was born. Working through examples from a book called Techniques of Positional Play. So this is a book that I'm working through on Chessable. And I reached these outpost positions and I thought, okay, this would be a perfect lesson to do for one of our live classes. So that's what we're going to go through today. All right. And then now let's jump to the analysis board. Peter's saying not everyone, Matt. Is there a price of born before? I like it. Well, I was born in 1985, so close. All right, game number 1. So we have Rubenstein with the white pieces, Duras with the black pieces. This game was played in 1911, and we reach this position. Okay, so we're putting ourselves in white's shoes. Bishop to h3 was just played by black. So here's my first question for you guys. What is our outpost? Put your answer in the chat. What is our outpost square? If you were born before 1907, you get a discount. I like it. Yeah, lifetime access should be based on what year you were born. Or is that a little too morbid? F4? Okay, Peter's saying F4 for the outpost. Peter's also saying maybe C4. C4 and F5. c7. Smithy Q is saying knight c4 combined with bishop to a3. Lyle, that's a great question. So high level, and this comes from Silman's book, Reassess Your Chess. At a high level, if we think of an outpost square for a knight, because it's usually a knight, but not always. A knight is typically strongest on the 6th rank if you're playing the white pieces, followed by the 5th rank, followed by the 4th rank. And the reason for that is because on the 6th rank, a knight can still touch 8 different squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But as soon as you go up to the 7th rank with the knight, you lose the option. There's no B9 square and there's no E9 square, right? So all of a sudden now you only touch 6 squares. So on average, you kind of want the knight outpost to be somewhere in this range, like 4th through 6th rank if you're playing the white pieces. Okay, good answers in the chat. The strongest outpost square in this position is going to be c4. f5 would be a good square, but currently the problem is black has 3 pieces that can get to it, and it can very easily be kicked by g6, but f5 would typically be a good outpost square when you see these pawns on dark. So c4, that's going to be our outpost square. Now, second question, what's the best move for white here? So kind of think about what move you would play and what move black would play in response, and use that to formulate your guess on what is the best move here for white. Christian is saying pawn to a4. Anis is saying bishop takes h3. And those are both really good guesses. Any other suggestions? Rook to c1. And like I talked about in the introduction, these are pretty high-level examples. So a lot of these positions, it's not as obvious as the Reassess Your Chess book, where it's like, there's one just massive outpost square. You move your knight 2 times and you land in that square. These examples, the opponent is trying to fight back against the outpost too. All right, so the top 2 engine moves are bishop takes h3 and knight to c4. So the first couple answers were correct. Bishop takes h3. The idea, did I say knight to c4? Sorry, bishop takes h3 and pawn to a4. Maybe I said knight c4. These are the top 2 moves. But the idea is we want the knight on c4. If you play knight c4 right away though, black can go bishop takes g2, king takes g2, pawn to b5, kicking the knight. Now the knight just has to go back, and we don't really ever get our outpost square. Like if we play pawn to a4 later, black could probably play pawn to a6, and this b pawn is forever going to guard this outpost square. So that's why the move played in the game was pawn to a4. And this is a cool idea because if you're playing this in a blitz game, you might just jump your knight to c4 immediately. But once you think about this b5 pawn dynamic, that's when a4 strikes you as such a good move. So now in the game, black traded off this bishop, king takes, and he played rook e to b8. And the idea here is black wants to play pawn to b5, and if we take, black wants to take back with the queen and try to apply pressure to b3. So I like to talk about imbalances a lot, and one of the imbalances in this position is the pawn structure differences. So the weakest pawn for black is this pawn on d6. And Smithy Q hit the nail on the head when he said, we should look to play bishop a3, knight c4, because the whole idea is let's pile up on this weakest pawn. So if you're playing this from the black side, you want to fight against that outpost of knight c4. You want to fight against this idea of white playing knight c4, bishop a3. What's the best way to do that? It's going to be some sort of pawn break, either f5 or b5. And in this case, black is saying, let's go for b5. So here, Duras puts his knight immediately on c4. Sorry, Rubenstein. Rubenstein puts his knight right on c4. Says, I don't care if you're going to play b5. So now b5 was played. A takes b. Queen takes b5. So in this position, we're looking at about a +1 eval. Even though the material is equal, Stockfish says +1. This pawn is hanging. This pawn is also hanging. So the threat is queen takes b3. Now here's the next question for you guys. What do you play as white? Put your answers in the chat. What's the best move for white? Bishop a3. So Anis is saying bishop a3. Chess Simple saying Rubenstein was the ultimate adult improver, not starting until age 16. Yeah, that's super impressive. Peter's saying that he also went crazy at the end of his career. All right, David is saying knight takes d6 right away, grabbing the pawn. There's two moves here that stand out as the best option. One was played in the game. Smithy Q is very tempted to play rook a5, sack the b pawn, bring the other rook over to a1 soon. Chess Simple is saying rook f to b1. So no one has mentioned the top two moves yet. If you already guessed, throw in another answer. Give me another candidate move. Rook f to b1 is the third best move. And the idea with rook f to b1 is if queen takes b3, you could move the bishop to c3 and the queen is trapped. So it's kind of a cool idea. Yeah, I see two rook a3s. That was the move played in the game. Rook to a3. Bishop to c3 is also a good move with the idea of the queen trap. So bishop c3 if queen takes, rook to b1. But rook a3 is played in the game. And the idea here is simple. White's saying, I'm just going to take one move to defend this b3 pawn. So it's guarded by rook and queen. It's attacked by rook and queen, but there's no way for black to attack that pawn another time currently. And now knight takes d6. The threat is renewed. All right, so in the game, knight to g6 was played. This was a mistake, though. The best move is pawn to f5. So just like we talked about earlier, when you look at the imbalances, right now, not a lot is favoring black. So black should look to make the position a little bit messier to try to create some counterplay. f5 is a critical move. Even though it looks strange, it looks like you're opening up the king, you're opening up the light squares. You have to play f5 as black here to try to fight back. The knight g6 played in the game. White plays rook f to a1, Smithy Q's idea. Getting this full control of the a file. It's a plus 1.7 eval. White went on to win the position. And then one kind of cool idea here that white could use is attack on the king side. So white's already kind of controlling queen side and center. White could look to attack king side, like h4, h5. You have the queen that can slide over. So it's kind of playing for this full board control. All right, let's jump to example number 2. This time, we have Nimzovich with the black pieces against Van Vliet. I don't know that player, but he's playing the white pieces, and this game is from 1907. So we reached this position, 14 moves in. This comes out of a Kali system. And the first question is, what is our outpost square? So put your answers in the chat. What is our outpost square? It's probably going to be a dark square because we see all of these black pawns on light squares. We have our center pawns on dark squares. Smithy Q is saying, forget the outpost, we have a kingside attack. C5, E5, D4. Yeah, you guys are exactly right. So I think the first outpost we're going to want to use is the D4 square. So that's going to be the plan in this position. But how do we get there? So what should we do to try to get to the d4 square? And we want our knight to head up here. There's two top moves. One was played in the game, and the other was mentioned in Nimzovich's notes. So Nimzovich was the black pieces here. But he mentioned in his notes a different way for white to play for the advantage. Wow, you guys are good. Okay, so 3 people said pawn to b4, and Chess Simple gives the follow-up with knight b3, bishop to d4. Yeah, and moving the queen to g3 is what was played in the game. So Peter, that's also a good idea. And what I like about your guys' suggestion of playing b4 is you're not afraid of giving up a potential outpost on c4. So every time a pawn moves forward, it can create some sort of weakness, right? The squares that it used to cover are no longer defended. But in this case, it's so important to improve our d2 knight, and it's not very easy for black to make use of this square. We could always just move this bishop out of the way, and it makes b4 a strong move. So sometimes you got to create a positional weakness in order to get some advantages, and here it's going to be the d4 outpost. So now after bishop to b6, what's the best move for white here? And this is a little bit of a trick question. David, outpost can be on the 4th rank. It's more typical to be 5th or 6th, though. You're right. So this is a bit of a trick question. But what is the strongest move for white? Put your answers in the chat. I have a feeling Smithy Q is going to get this one based on an earlier comment. Just Simple is saying queen h5. Honest is saying queen g3, Christian, queen h3. Queen g3 from John. Queen g3 is the answer. Queen g3 is the strongest move here. And the idea is you have both bishops pointing at black's king side. Now you add the queen's pressure on g7. This is forcing black to make a concession on the king side. Anytime black has to make a move like pawn g6, pawn f6, it's just going to create holes around the black king. And knight to f6 is going to forever leave that knight pinned to g7, so that's not a great solution either. So that's queen g3 is the strongest move. Knight to b3 played in the game, also a good move. It was the second best. Queen e7 played. Now knight d4. And look at how the pawn on f4 secures the knight on d4. So there's no easy way for black to kick this knight. And if bishop takes knight, bishop takes back, now white has the bishop pair advantage. And look at how strong these bishops are. Right in the center, they point both directions, and this bishop on c6 is a terrible piece right now. It's the same color as all of these pawns. It's trapped in, and this knight isn't doing anything right now. So black doesn't want to play bishop takes d4. The knight's on an awesome outpost, and the eval here is around 0.7. But that's how you secure the outpost. And, if black plays a move like bishop to b7, you can continue the attack. And I think white has very good winning chances here, right around +1 eval. All right, let's move on to example number 3. Nimzovich with the white pieces this time against Tarash with the black pieces. This is going to be an endgame position. And usually we don't think about outposts as much in the endgame. They tend to be more of a middle game idea, but there is a cool idea here. So this game was played in 1925, came out of a symmetrical English opening. So question number 1 that I have for you guys is, what do you think the eval is here? Unfortunately, I remembered to hide the eval bar, which I've forgotten in the past. Put your guess. What do you think the eval is? Type it in the chat. And it might surprise you. Everything is completely symmetric. Christian saying +1.8. All right, very confident in white's position. Honest is saying +1. Ian is saying 2.0. Okay, no one's saying 0.0. John's saying +1. Maybe I gave it away with the surprising factor. Just simple 2.5. All right, now you guys are all guessing high. What is going on? It's 0.8. The eval is 0.8. All right, next, let's talk about the imbalances a little bit. So put in the chat, what are the imbalances in this position? What favors white? What favors black? And I feel like you should have a lot of imbalances to list with these evals, plus 1.8, plus 2, plus 2.5. Okay, Christian's saying we got the doubled rooks on the C file. And one thing to note, in general, when you have two open files like this, it's better to control the C file than the D file. And the reason for that is because the kings are on the E file currently, right? So these kings guard squares on the D file. So it's more advantageous to have your rooks a little bit further away from the kings. So C file is better than D file here. Smithy Q and Christian are saying the knight is better placed than black's. Yes, 100%. This black knight doesn't have any of these three moves available. It can only go back to B8. This knight is sitting pretty well. It's got the A5 square, the C5 square, the D4 square. Yep, you guys are all on the right track. So now, what is our outpost square? What is the outpost square in this position? D4, D6. Oh, D6 would be awesome. If we had our pawn up on E5 and knight on D6, that would be really good. Spin the Q saying knight to B5. Yeah, so the first outpost square, Honest is correct. D4, that's our first outpost square. All right, so D4 is the outpost square. The best move in this position is either F4 or knight to D4. But the move played in the game sort of matches what we've been learning so far. Pawn to F4, and I really like this move because you look at this position and we just talked about all these imbalances that favor white, and they tend to be the rooks and the knight. So most players are going to be tempted here to move a rook or the knight. Pawn to F4 is a nice subtle move, and the whole idea is it's blocking black from playing pawn to E5 so that our knight can land on this outpost square. And it's not your typical outpost, right? It doesn't feel like it's locked up by any pawns, but it's a super strong square getting the knight to D4 here. It's a big improvement from sitting on B3 because then it can head to B5. It can always target F5. It could go back to F3 and come to E5 as a new outpost square. So we really would love to centralize this knight. So F4, very strong move by Nimzovich. Rook H to D8 played. Now we reach the outpost safely, knight on D4. And here, this might be something that you were wondering. This is what I was wondering when I looked at this game. Can black simply play F6, E5, kick this knight out? The answer is yes. We can't do anything about that. But there's downsides to this plan. So F6 is a bit of a mistake. White plays A4 in the game, pawn to E5, and the strongest move here was King F7, followed by B6. So the best thing for black to do is to just sort of sit back and wait. The E5 was played. Now after F takes, knight F3, look at this weakness that was just created. The pawn on E5 is extremely weak. This knight is still shut out from the action, and we have moves like rook E4, and our knight is already attacking the pawn. So all of this happened just because of our fight for the outpost, right? Playing move F4 4 moves ago gave black the idea, hey, let's try to prevent white from using that outpost square. Black thought, I need to play F6 and E5 to not allow the outpost on D4. But this created a new imbalance that we can play against, the weak pawn on E5. So King E6 played. White goes pawn to B4, just expanding queenside, getting ready to kick this knight. And the knight only has the B8 square. Pawn to B6. Now here, I want you guys to put the best move in the chat. This was missed in the game by Nimzovich. So the move played in the game pretty much gave up most of the advantage. We'll look at the eval after I make the move, but it's definitely not a top move. The top move here is going to be a +2. So what should white play? Put your answers in the chat. Maybe give multiple moves if you can. Give me the best line. We want to figure out, how do we take advantage of black's weaknesses? All right, rook g4 or rook h4. Swing the rook across. What else do we think? Yeah, Memphis. So what else do we think? G4 and rook c6. Oh, that's kind of going for the mating net idea. Similar to our endgame class that we had, Chess Simple. So no one said the top move yet, though. What's the best move for white? There it is. John got the answer. Rook to e4. Rook to e4 is the strongest move. Rook to d5 in response to defend this pawn. And now, pawn to h4. This creates the threat of knight to g5, followed by rook to c6. So when the knight goes to, if the knight were to go to g5 right here, king can play to f5. This knight is not defended. So that's kind of the idea. Start with h4, threatening knight g5. And if h6 is played now, we can play h5. And this just created new weaknesses for black. Right now, this square could be a target. The rook could come over. Yeah, rook g4 is going to be a huge threat. So this is the idea. Pawn to h4. So now if king to f6 is played, we have a really cool tactic here. Knight takes e5. And if the rook takes back, rook c6 check, and rook f4 with the checkmate. So this all started from an equal looking position and that outpost on d4. And this is something that happens a lot in chess. Like, as beginners, we learn what the back rank mate is, for example, and we learn Boden's checkmate, how to do, queen bishop checkmate along the diagonal attacking h7. You hit a point where you start to think, well, none of these ever work. My opponents always defend the threats. Oftentimes, it's the threat that's more important than actually executing it, right? Because your opponents will most likely see the threat, and you're not playing hope chess, but you use that to create other imbalances that you can play with, right? You weaken their king, they create other weaknesses like the pawn on e5 in this case. So we can use this threat of the outpost to encourage black to kick our knight out, because if they don't kick the knight out, it's still a bad position for black, right? They have to just sit and play defense. But then when they try to kick our outpost square, creates a new weakness, and this can end up deciding the game if we play rook e4 here. So in the game, rook 1 to c2 was played. That lost like half the advantage, so we're looking at +1 instead of +2. And a couple players that you can look at their games if you want to look at strong outposts, Hikaru Nakamura, he's really good at knight outposts, especially in blitz chess. Like, you'll find a lot of games where he'll trade a bishop for a knight, put his pawns on the square that his bishop was, so that his remaining bishop is a good piece, and then he'll use those pawns to create an outpost square for one of his knights. Hikaru is super good at outposts, and a player that I also like to watch for his use of knights and outposts is John Bartholomew. I think John is really good at playing for knight outposts as well. So in this game, we have Anthony Miles playing white, and I don't recognize the player playing black. I can't even say it. Turink. was played in 1978. And we reach this position very similar to the last one. So same sort of pawn structure. We have rooks on C, black has rooks on D, and it's white to move. And in this case, it's only a very slight advantage. So we're only looking at a 0.2 or 0.3 eval here. Smithy Q is already saying pawn to F4 based on the last game. So now I'll still ask, what's your best move here? Put it in the chat. So F4 is the correct idea, but you want to make a different move first, Smithy. You want to prep it a little bit. F4 is coming on the next move. So we're on move 22. F4 will be move 23. All right, Anas is saying rook 1 to C2, defending this D2 entry point for the black rook. Christian's saying the same thing. That's what was played in the game. That's correct. Knight to D4, the computer also likes, but I think this is the simplest. This is what Miles played in the game, just saying, all right, we're going to take one move to guard the square. And it's kind of like that other example we looked at where white played rook A3 to guard the B pawn. Sometimes you just got to make one defensive move, shore up your own weaknesses, and then push ahead with your aggressive plans. So here black played knight to E4, renewing the threat. Now white played F4. And this move is interesting to me because you could argue, hey, this knight on E4 is an outpost. Why are we going to allow the knight on E4? Well, this goes back to that thing we talked about with C file versus D file. Because our king is able to help out near the D file, our rooks are a little bit better than black's rooks. So we're actually okay with this outpost for now. So let's see what happens. King E7 by black. Rook to C7. Now in this position, knight to D4 is also good, but it's going to get there soon. Don't worry. We'll get to the outpost square. So rook C7. Black plays pawn to A6. Slight mistake. And now white plays knight to D4. This is the outpost square. D4 is an awesome square. The knight now threatens knight to C6, forking the king and rook. This pawn can really never go up to E5 because we'll have knight to F5, and it's currently defended by the F pawn. So black in the game thought, how do I get this knight out of here, right? This knight is completely shutting down any deep D-file play. So similar to the other game we looked at, black decides, I'm going to try to kick that knight out. And he plays king to F6. And the idea is he wants to play G5 and E5. E5 kicks the knight. Tony's opponent was a Dutch international master. Okay, thank you for that. His name was Gert. And after king to F6, white plays pawn to B4. H6, going for G5. Swap on D7. King to F3, kicking the knight. Knight retreats. Rook C6. And at this point, white is going to win a pawn by force. And he goes on to win the game in just 4 more moves. So amazingly, we went from another equal position to one where black sort of overreacted to the outpost knight, trying to get E5 and G5, and he never even got them in. But the fact that he was playing king F6, pawn H6, these moves were too slow. So now let's just go back and look at what black should have done here. So in this position, when F4 was first played, one move that I think is pretty cool, it's the 3rd best move, but it's very close on eval, is pawn to G5. This is kind of going back to the endgame lecture that I did where you want to play active in the endgames, because now if white takes, you can go rook to D2 check, and this would be a mistake. After takes in here, we grab this pawn with check, and look at how active the black pieces are. The rook is on the dominant 2nd rank, knight's hitting with check, this king is trapped from behind. That's how I would probably play it, pawn to F5. There's a couple other good moves. Knight to d6 is one of them. And if knight to d4 is played, then knight to f5. It looks really weird, but the whole idea is let's just get rid of that outpost. And this would be more playing for a draw as black. Allowing the double pawns, knowing that you can kind of just neutralize anything that white tries. And one other try here is pawn to h6. This is a good one as well. Let's see, what did white play in the game? Rook c7. So if white does rook c7 again, now you go g5. So it's kind of similar to what black did in the game, but black didn't waste the time putting the king all the way up on f6. Didn't kick this knight out, bringing our knight to this awesome outpost square. You just want to very quickly fight against this pawn. Play actively. Okay, Chess Simple in the chat said, Gert in a world of hurt. It's probably the only time he's ever heard that one, I bet. Oh, I got to show this opening. So now we have Botvinnik against Chekover from 1935. I like this opening, so I just have to show it. This is a ready against d5, and this is called the anti-Slav. So you don't put a pawn on d4 as white. You create this sort of attacking structure where black has the triangle set up. And you have the bishop going along the long diagonal. And typically here you'll see the queen on c2 on this long diagonal, and you try to attack the black king. And a lot of times what I'll do in these positions, instead of castling kingside, I'll put the queen here. And after knight d7, if the bishop is on e2 already, this is a little bit slower. But you can keep the bishop back sometimes and play rook g1, g4, g5. Or you can play h3, g4, g5. And just go for a caveman pawn storm on the king side. So I do like these setups for white. I think if you're a Slav player, it can be a little annoying to face this kind of stuff when white doesn't play d4. Okay, so here's the critical position. White to move. White wants to play knight to d4 and use this as a permanent outpost. So actually, I'm going to pose this question as black to move. Knight d4 just played by white. White wants to play pawn to f4 next and try to make this an outpost long term. So what should black play here? In the game, black made a mistake. So put your answers in the chat. What should black play? Hannes is saying pawn to c5. Kick that knight right away. Couple answers for e5. Hey, Dennis is in the chat. Welcome, Dennis. Pawn to e5. Christian, e5. Okay, let's look at e5 first. The downside of e5 is it opens up this f5 square. And from f5, the knight attacks the bishop. It doesn't have d6. These other squares are all occupied. And if the bishop tries to go out to b4, for example, it's going to get harassed, like pawn to a3, and either black's giving up the bishop pair or kind of putting that bishop out of play on a5 with the potential b4 coming. So it's not a terrible move, pawn to e5, but it does allow this knight to f5 hop. Pawn to c5 immediately. That's a pretty good move. Knight to c2 or knight to f3 is the reply, and it's only around a 0.1 eval. So c5 is what Nimzovich said should have been played to drive this knight away. The top engine move was not mentioned by Nimzovich. It's actually rook to e8. And the idea is after f4, now you play e5, and with the rook on f8, let's say knight f5, you can tuck the bishop back. So that's kind of a higher level idea, but you play rook e8, allow knight to f5, knowing that the bishop can tuck back. So that's the top engine move. Okay, so what was played in the game? D takes c4, positional inaccuracy. B takes back, knight to c5 played. And now, what should white play in this position? There's one move that stands out. Put your answers in the chat. We're going to get one answer for f4. Preventing e5. What does everyone else think? Pawn to f4. Any other ideas? So pawn to f4 is the correct move. f4, preventing pawn to e5. And the reason you can't drop the knight back here and try to jump into e5 is because of knight to d3. Knight to d3 is a super strong move. So f4 played in the game, queen c7 by black, and now knight to f3. There's no knight to d3 because the bishop takes and this queen is no longer on the d file. And after rook to d8, trying to threaten knight d3, white goes queen c2. And now white's ready to play pawn to d4. And new question for you guys. What is the new outpost in this position? So sometimes the outpost square changes, right? You go for one outpost square, the pawn structure changes, some pieces get traded, creates a new outpost square that's even stronger. That's exactly right, Honest. We want the e5 square. Christian got it too. Knight to e5. So now knight d7 played, trying to defend. Pawn d4. c5. Good move by black, trying to break up the outpost square. And in this position, there's only one move for white that's close to winning. Everything else is close to equal. So I think that's why this is such a good practical choice by black. d5. That's the only move to play for the winning advantage. Because if this knight moves to b6, for example, we have e4. And white just creates this massive pawn wall in the center. But in the game, white played knight to e5. So kind of playing stubbornly, trying to get this outpost. Now here, black made a big mistake. There's one move that holds equality for black. And I want you guys to find it. So what should black play here? This is the last question of this from this game. What should black play here to hold equality? Knight e8. Honest is always the first one with the answer in the chat. Knight e8, and probably the idea is f6, I'm thinking, to kick the knight. Chess Simple is saying knight to f8. We haven't seen the top answer yet. So feel free to put in a new candidate move. If you hadn't said a move yet, there's no bad answers. Just put what you think. Christian got it. C takes d4. Here's the idea. If e takes d4, pawn to b5. So now after pawn to b5, it looks like, oh, white can just push past, creating this passed pawn. That's correct, but black can play b4, kicking this knight, and then knight to d5. Now there's a huge outpost for black. Black's going to play f5 next, kicking this knight out. So we have one outpost on d5 for black, one outpost on e5 for white. And this position is approximately balanced. Knight to e3 forks queen and rook. Black's back in this game. But you had to fight actively here, right? You had to trade off the center pawn. You had to trade here, play b5, force this pawn to move up, and create your own outpost square. Playing active was the answer. But in the game, black plays b6, too passive, bishop d3. Now, what white should have played is probably pawn to d5, creating that big pawn center if possible. Now c takes d4 played. Not quite as good as the previous line because we wasted a little bit of time on b6. We're looking at about a half a pawn advantage for white. So white's got the slight advantage and the initiative. And it was thanks to the outpost. But there was this even stronger line on move 15 instead of knight e5 to switch gears a little bit and saying, okay, I used the outpost to create some weaknesses from the black camp. You know, I encouraged black to play c5, trying to break up my outpost. Well, now I can switch gears and play d5. So even though in chess we have a bunch of different rules that we like to play by, it's very important to play flexible and always think imbalances. Chess boards are constantly changing, even though it just feels like one little move, playing c5. This makes a huge difference in the position. All of a sudden now we want to shift gears and go d5. And that's what white missed. But it all came out of the outposts, right? Playing for that d4 square and then later the e5 square. You can use the outpost to dictate your plans. And then when you see that chance to create the pass pawn, go for it. All right, we got one more game to look at. Petrosian versus Spassky, 1969 World Championship match. 1969, before everyone in the chat was born. We should have like a, you know when you go to weddings and they'll do like oldest couple dance? We should have like an oldest viewer guess the move. With a prize. Like, okay, if you're born before if you're born after 1990, you have to leave the chat. And then whoever the last person watching the stream is wins. Like everyone just has to leave based on what year you were born. What do you guys think? So this one we're going to move 34. White to move. Where is the outpost square? And you can kind of tell based on this pawn structure. All of these pawns on dark squares. Honest is saying knight to e5. Chess Simple is playing pawn to f4. I like how everyone just ignores that like wedding tangent and talks about the chess. Staying focused. That's good. So f4, that's the correct answer. That's the outpost we really want. e5 would be nice too. Knight to f4 is the start. So we can play knight to f4 right here. Now, the cool thing about the knight on f4, he's a good piece here, but he's also a really good piece on d3. So a lot of times when you see these pawns on d4 and e3, the knight sits nicely right behind them, tucked behind, because then it's hitting all of the dark squares. Whereas from f4, it's hitting the light squares, and a lot of them are defended already. So we're using f4 to launch to other squares as well. Rook to d8. Now here, question for you guys again, what is the eval? And I'm not going to give you any hints. Put your answers in the chat. What is the eval? Honest is saying plus 1.3. Christian is saying 1.134. He decided to round to the thousandths place. Smithy Q 0.7. Not enough sig fig, Smithy. Chess Simple 2.12. Too much dominance on the light squares. Okay, that's a really impressive guess, Chess Simple. The chess.com analysis engine, which I have stopped at depth 22, is 2.10. But when I was running this in prep for the lesson on my own computer, I let Stockfish run a lot deeper. It's around +3. So white is somewhere in that +2 to +3 range here, depending on how long you run the engine, with dead equal material. Just Simple, born in 1975, does that get the wedding prize? I don't think so. I don't think that's quite old enough. So +3, why is this +3? The first reason is these knights are really strong in this position. The knight on b8 is a really passive piece right now. It's just stuck guarding c6, and the bishop on g7 is running into this pawn chain. So the knight and bishop aren't that great for black, and these knights are super strong, and it's because they can jump around and use these outpost squares. Also, let's look at the pawn structure. We have one weak pawn, the pawn on a4. It's attacked by a rook. It's out there, isolated on the a file, can't be defended by any other pawns, can't be defended by minor pieces. But black has two weak pawns, b6 and c6. So that's pretty much the list of imbalances, right? We have much stronger minor pieces, a little bit better pawn structure. I guess you could say the rooks as well. Our rooks are pressuring c6, but there is a knight defending it. So we can't make much of that yet. There's a less valuable piece defending c6. But we want to look to push this advantage. So the move played in the game, this is the strongest move, is knight to d3. And remember where that knight came from. He started on e2. So compare e2 to d3. Huge improvement for the knight already in just 2 moves. Now from d3, the knight can head to b4, hitting the rook, hitting c6, and this is where white's starting to push the advantage. So now black played bishop to f8, trying to improve the bishop, also preventing knight b4. Now in this position, knight f to e5 was played. There's an even stronger move though, knight d to e5. So it's the same idea, but that e2 knight now uses the e5 square. So scrolling back up in the chat, when we asked about what the outpost square was, e5 was mentioned by Honest, knight e5. So with the knight on e5, here's what happens. White wants to eventually play pawn to e4. If d takes e4, there's queen takes f7, and the black king is about to get checkmated. Or maybe have to sacrifice their queen for the knight on g6. But in the game, with this knight going here, now the f3 knight doesn't guard d4, so e4 is not as strong because e4 is kind of a weakness. But both moves are good for white. Just little nuance there, it'd be stronger with the d knight. Okay, so f played, rook c8 to defend this pawn, and now white plays rook c3. Subtle move, and we'll see why. Bishop e7, knight to f4. All of a sudden, knight takes d5 as a threat. This queen also has the option of switching back to c2, going on this diagonal, but knight takes d5 is a huge threat, utilizing this pin down the c file. Bishop f6 played, and now look what white does. Knight e to d3. So if we go back to the very first position on move 34, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 knight moves out of the last 6 moves for white. White has spent 5 of the last 6 moves shuffling the knights around, using outposts to improve the position. Now all of a sudden there are 2 threats. Knight takes d5, that threat is renewed, and knight to b4, hitting the rook and hitting both of these pawns at the same time. So I analyzed this position for a bit. The eval is now over +3, and white is winning at least 1 pawn by force, and white went on to win this game in 10 more moves. So all of these 6 examples we looked at today are super strong players from the 1900s that know about outposts, right? But they're not the super GMs of today's generation that have much more complex games, right? So it's easier to learn from some of these older games because they have the ideas that we want to use in our play, and they tend to play out a little more clearly than modern Grandmaster games. And I just think it's cool that you can use outposts like this to really push your advantage. It's not something that I appreciate enough in my games. So when I've been going through this course, learning about outposts, it's really been kind of like a light bulb turned on where I think, okay, how can I use outposts in my games to try to increase my advantage, especially in some of these positions where it's like equal or you're up half a pawn. This position, it's closer to 1.5 pawns, but how do you press that advantage, that slight advantage, using the outpost squares? Yeah, Smithy Q, I agree. Love classic games for that reason, learnability. I also like, if you want to look at current Grandmaster games, I like looking at their blitz games and their rapid games because there's more mistakes. And if you can watch, let's say, Hikaru outplay someone in a Titled Tuesday, that's a pretty instructive game in my opinion, compared to, let's say, Hikaru against Caruana in a classical game. Like the level is just so high, we can't learn as much. All right, now let's shift gears. That's the end of the chess lesson. And we're going to look at the course promotion. So this is for everyone who watched today and signed up via email. This is something that we've been doing in our live streams. We have a 50% off code for you guys for the ChessGoals courses. There's a link in the description. It's chessgoals.com. But if you use the coupon code Outpost, that's the code for today's lesson, you can receive 50% off any course or any bundle. So we have 11 courses that are paid courses right now. They total to $689. And the Lifetime Access bundle also gives you the free access to all of our future courses. So Ian's saying in the chat, he's looking forward to the French Defense course, already a lifetime member. That French Defense course, Ian, is coming out this week with the pre-sale. The pre-sale will launch tomorrow. John's also looking forward to it. And we have the beginner move by move course that Presta J has been helping with. We have a couple other courses coming down the pipeline. We have a 1G3 for white. We have a Nimzo course for black and a G6 course for black. So a lot of courses coming down the pipeline. Chess Simple, also a lifetime member, says best deal in chess content, bar none. I appreciate that, Chess Simple. We have a recent Queen's Gambit Decline course. That's this last one listed. That's a really good course. It's higher level. Smithy Q, I know, has that course and he really likes it. But it's an expansion on our original Queen's Gambit course. So just looking at QGD Exchange. And these are some of the commonly asked questions about our courses. What do they come with? Well, you get the PGN download. You can also download all the videos, so you can watch them from wherever. We don't worry about, let's say, the courses being pirated or shared. We trust people not to do that. So you can download your files, which is really nice. You don't get that with other courses. You can throw it into ChessBase, upload it into chess.com, wherever you want. 30-day money-back guarantee. No questions asked. So if you don't like the course, you just send me an email, get your money right back. Customer support. That's myself if you send an email, but in our Discord, we have other people that help as well. You get lifetime access. So if you do the lifetime access bundle, that's lifetime access to all current and future courses. But if you just purchase one singular course, you get lifetime access to that course. So like our Caro Khan course, for example, that's our oldest course. We're always adding new content to the course, and you just get that content included once you purchase the course. And then we also have a private community. So this is on Discord. We have a community, and we also have a community within the course player. So there's like a forum in there. You can ask questions about openings. And one thing that I really like is within each course, there's a discussion section on every chapter of the course. So sometimes people will ask a question right within that chapter, and I can go in and respond, and you can even insert diagrams and things where I can say, here's a link to a YouTube video, or here's a diagram with an explanation. So it's that interactive feedback with the students, and every other student, when they look at that course, that lesson, they can go in and see those questions and answers. And this, I ran some stats on our reviews. I used to count up the individual reviews. It's getting to be too many. So we have over 3,000 course members, a 4.95 star average out of 5. 83 reviews. And this is one of our students, James' reviews on the London course. And he just really appreciates that course for intermediate players. So are there any questions on the courses, 50% off deal, or we could talk about Outposts a bit too if you guys have questions on Outposts. Yeah, Ian appreciates the Discord service. That's awesome. The Nimzo course is going to be myself and James. So James, who's kind of done a lot of London content for the YouTube channel and in Discord, he's going to be doing the bulk of the work for the Nimzo course, and then I'm kind of reviewing things and I'll be helping with the videos. So that's going to be a Nimzo and Queen's Indian combination, 2 separate courses. But I'm kind of excited for the G6 course as black. Chess Simple, that's a good question. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I'll have to look. I do have the PGN file. So PGN is ready for the Nimzo portion. There will be some just minor edits. So really for my tasks in terms of courses, I need to publish the French course, get all that set up in the course player. And then I'll be recording videos for the beginner move by move course. And then James and I need to record videos for the Nimzo course. Okay, I don't see any questions. One thing I want you guys to help me figure out what classes to do in the future for the live classes. So I think the Outpost topic wasn't as popular as the previous topics. So look for me to send out some inquiries on what we should talk about next. So probably what I'll do is get a list of ideas and then grab like 5 of those ideas and put them into a poll and let people vote. And maybe we still want to talk about endgames more or things that we did in previous classes. But I knew going into today's class, we had a lot less signups. And I think it was just because it was Outposts and the topic isn't as fun as some of the others. Yeah, thanks for coming, Ian. Oh, that's a good idea, John. Like a guess the eval class with explanations. Use Outpost to beat Magnus every game might have helped. Yeah. I saw a great, was it Instagram or Twitter? I saw a great post about the Magnus watch scandal. And actually, I was at a kids' chess tournament yesterday helping out. And one of the kids says, I'm not going to wear my watch today for the games. And some other kid was like, why not? And the first kid goes, because I don't want any scandals on my hands, so I'm not wearing the watch. I was like, this got referenced at a kid tournament? That's amazing. And I think their ratings were like 600. No pun intended. Yeah, Ian, it's possible. I sent the email to the whole mailing list, but sometimes it can like get caught in a promotions folder or something if you have Gmail. But I think I sent less emails about this class than some of the prior classes. But I will send an email to everyone with a link to the replay of this live video, and then probably later this week, what I'll do is I'll crop out the intro and I'll crop out this end part and just put the class part on YouTube. So you'll be able to go look at the live video for a couple days, and then it'll shift to like posted video separate from the live. All right, well, I think that's all the questions then. I appreciate everyone coming to watch. Hope you can use these outposts in your games. I'm taking off to play a little bit of pickleball soon, so I got to eat some lunch. Thanks, SmithyQ. Thanks, Christian. Thanks, Dennis. Chess Simple, John, Presta J. Thanks, everybody. All right, have a good rest of your day. We'll see you guys later.